Today I'm going to tell you the story of Neymar and a promise that changed everything. The Brazilian superstar faced devastating criticism before the Copa América final against Argentina when he made an intimate promise that would transform his career forever, but the outcome exceeded all expectations. Please subscribe to our channel and comment where you're listening to this story from. The promise. The locker room at the Estádio Nacional in Brasília was suffocating, not from the heat, though the Brazilian summer pressed down like a weight, but from the pressure that seemed to squeeze the air from every corner. Neymar sat on the wooden bench, his head buried in his hands, the familiar pre-game ritual playing out around him. Teammates stretched, adjusted shin guards, exchanged nervous jokes. But for him, this moment was different. The Copa América final. Brazil versus Argentina. Messi's last dance, they were calling it. The weight of an entire nation's expectations rested on shoulders that had carried so much already. The 7-1 against Germany, the missed penalty in the Olympics, the constant comparisons to Pelé that followed him like shadows. His phone buzzed, on the bench beside him. Another message from his father. "Filho, the whole family is watching, make us proud." The words, meant to encourage, only added to the knot in his stomach. He could picture them now. His mother Nadine pacing nervously in front of the television, his sister Rafaela biting her nails, his son Davi barely old enough to understand, but wearing his father's jersey with innocent pride. "Ney, você está bem?" Casemiro's voice cut through his thoughts. The defensive midfielder had been watching him from across the room, concern etched on his weathered face. Neymar looked up, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just thinking, Case. You know how it is." But Casemiro knew better. They all did. This wasn't just pre-game nerves, this was something deeper, something that had been building since they'd arrived at the tournament. The criticism had been relentless. Social media, sports journalists, even former players questioning whether Neymar still had what it took to lead Brazil to glory. The memory of last week's semi-final against Colombia still stung. Yes, they'd won, but his performance had been scrutinized endlessly. Every touch, every pass, every moment of perceived selfishness had been dissected by pundits who seemed more interested in tearing him down than building the team up. The headlines had been brutal. Neymar's individual show costs Brazil, and when will he learn to play for the team? "Listen." Casemiro sat down beside him, lowering his voice so the others couldn't hear. "I've been playing with you for years. I know when something's eating at you." "What's going on?" Neymar's jaw tightened. How could he explain the sleepless nights, the constant replay of every mistake, every moment where he'd fallen short? The phone calls from his father, trying to be supportive but unable to hide his own frustration. The way his sister Rafaela had stopped watching his games because she couldn't bear to see the hate comments that flooded social media after every match. "They think I'm done, Case." The words came out barely above a whisper. "They think I'm just finished, that I'll never win anything important with Brazil." The locker room had grown quieter now, most of the players heading toward the tunnel for warm-ups. Through the concrete walls, they could hear the rumble of 70,000 voices, a sound that usually electrified Neymar, but today felt like a judgment waiting to be passed. Each chant seemed to carry both hope and skepticism in equal measure. Gabriel. Jesus walked past, patting Neymar's shoulder. "Capitão, we believe in you," he said simply, but the gesture carried weight. These players, Alisson, Marquinhos, Casemiro, Vinicius Jr., they had followed him through disappointment after disappointment, never losing faith even when he'd lost faith in himself. "Remember when we were kids dreaming about this?" Casemiro asked, his voice gentle but firm. "Playing in your backyard in Santos, pretending to be Ronaldinho, talking about winning the World Cup? That kid didn't worry about what people thought, he just played." Neymar nodded slowly, but the doubt remained etched in his features. That kid didn't have the whole country on his back. That kid didn't know what it felt like to fail when it mattered most. The memories came flooding back. The penalty shootout loss to Paraguay in 2011, his first major heartbreak with the national team, the Olympics final in Rio, when the whole country had expected him to deliver gold on home soil. The World Cup in Russia, cut short by injury before the knockout stages even began. Each failure had chipped away at his confidence, replacing the fearless joy of his youth with something more cautious, more burdened. Through the doorway, they could see Tite, the coach, making his final preparations. The tactical board was covered with arrows and formations, but Neymar knew the real battle would be fought in his mind. Argentina had Messi, playing with the desperation of a man running out of time. They had Di Maria, whose pace could expose any defensive lapse. They had a hunger that came from years of heartbreak in finals. Tite pulled me aside yesterday, Neymar confided to Casemiro. He said this team is different, that we're ready. But I keep thinking about all the times we've been ready before. The coach's words echoed in his mind. Neymar, you are not the same player who walked into that penalty shootout in 2014. You are not the young man who carried too much weight in Russia. You have learned, you have grown, and this team trusts you completely. I need some air, Neymar said suddenly, standing and walking toward the small window that overlooked the parking lot. The security lights cast long shadows across the asphalt, and he could see the team buses that had brought them here, the same buses that would either carry champions or the defeated back to their hotel. Outside, he could see groups of Brazilian fans making their way toward the stadium, their yellow jerseys bright against the evening darkness. Families with children, elderly supporters who had waited decades for another Copa América triumph, young fans who had never seen Brazil win a major tournament. They all believed, despite everything, despite the disappointments, despite the criticism, despite the years of near misses. Alone now, with Casemiro having rejoined the team for final instructions, Neymar closed his eyes and did something he hadn't done in months. He prayed. Not the casual routine prayers of childhood, but something deeper, more desperate. Deus, he whispered, his breath fogging the glass. I know I haven't been perfect. I know I've made mistakes, said things I shouldn't have, let pride get in the way. But this team, these guys believe in me. My country believes in me even when they're angry. If you give me this, if you help me lead Brazil to victory tonight, I promise I'll use this platform differently. I'll stop thinking about myself first. I'll remember what this jersey really means. The words felt strange in his mouth, more honest than anything he'd said to a journalist in years. I promise I'll honor this gift you've given me. Not just the talent, but the responsibility that comes with it. Help me be the player, the leader, the man that Brazil needs tonight. He thought of his grandfather, who had passed away when Neymar was just starting his professional career. The old man had always told him, talent is God's gift to you. What you do with it is your gift back to God. Tonight, finally, Neymar understood what that meant. He opened his eyes and saw his reflection in the window, the familiar face that graced magazine covers and endorsement deals. But tonight it looked younger, somehow more vulnerable. For a moment, he saw the kid from Mogi das Cruzes who used to practice headers against his bedroom wall until his mother yelled at him to stop. Neymar! Tite's voice boomed from the tunnel. Vamos! The moment was over. Whatever happened next would happen on the pitch under the lights with the world watching. But something had shifted in those quiet minutes by the window. The weight was still there, it would always be there, but now it felt different. Less like a burden and more like purpose. As he jogged toward the tunnel, joining his teammates, for the walk onto the pitch, Neymar felt his heart rate settling into the familiar rhythm of competition. The crowd's roar grew louder with each step, and when they emerged into the cauldron of noise and light that was the Estadio Nacional on final night, he felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The promise had been made. Now came the hardest part, keeping it. The battle. The whistle pierced through the roar of 70,000 voices, and the Copa América final began. Neymar felt the familiar rush as his feet touched the ball for the first time, the leather responding to his touch like an old friend. But this wasn't the same Neymar who had started previous finals. Something fundamental had changed in those quiet moments by the locker room window. Argentina came out aggressive, pressing high, with Messi dropping deep to collect the ball and orchestrate attacks. Within the first 5 minutes, it was clear this would be a war of attrition. Every tackle was harder, every challenge more desperate. The referee's whistle seemed to echo constantly across the pitch. The intensity was palpable from the opening seconds. Rodrigo de Paul clattered into Fred with a challenge that in any other match might have earned a yellow card. But the Uruguayan referee, understanding the magnitude of the occasion, waved play on. The message was clear. This final would be decided by the players, not by his whistle unless absolutely necessary. "Stay calm, stay calm," Neymar shouted to his teammates as Di Maria skinned Danilo down the right flank, sending a dangerous cross that Alisson punched away at the last second. The early pressure was intense, but he could feel his promise from the locker room steadying his nerves. The crowd was a living, breathing entity, their chants creating a wall of sound that seemed to push and pull the players like an invisible force. Behind the Brazilian goal, a massive tifo displayed Pelé's face with the words "Para o Rei," for the king. The weight of history pressed down on everyone wearing yellow. In the 12th minute, Neymar received the ball on the left wing, facing Molina, Argentina's right back. The crowd held its breath. This was the moment they'd been waiting for, the first real test of Brazil's talisman. Instead of his usual elaborate stepovers and tricks, Neymar kept it simple. A quick touch to the left, a burst of pace, and he was past Molina, driving toward the penalty area. The Argentine bench erupted in frustrated shouts. Scaloni was gesticulating wildly, clearly unhappy with his team's defensive shape. Messi jogged back to help defensively, something that would have been unthinkable in his younger years, but had become part of his evolution as a player. "Vini!" Neymar called out, spotting his Real Madrid teammate making a run into the box. The cross was perfect, weighted just right, but Vinicius Jr.'s header sailed just over the crossbar. The Brazilian fans groaned in unison, but Neymar felt something different. Usually a missed opportunity like that would have frustrated him, made him try to do everything himself. Tonight he just applauded his teammates' effort and jogged back into position. Casemiro noticed the change immediately. During a brief stoppage for an injury to Paredes, who had collided with Marquinhos in an aerial duel, he jogged over to Neymar. "You're different tonight, brother. I can feel it." "I'm playing for them." Neymar gestured toward the stands where Brazilian flags waved like a yellow and green ocean. Not for the critics, not for the media, for them. In the stands he could see familiar faces, former teammates, celebrities, politicians, but most importantly, regular Brazilians who had saved money for months just to be here. A father was explaining the game to his young son, both wearing Neymar jerseys. An elderly woman clutched a rosary, praying between chants. These were the people he had made his promise for. The game settled into a rhythm. Argentina controlling possession, Brazil looking dangerous on the counter. Messi was everywhere, dropping deep, drifting wide, constantly probing for weaknesses in Brazil's defense. But every time he got close to creating something significant, Casemiro or Fabinho was there to break up the play. The tactical battle was fascinating to watch. Scaloni had clearly instructed his team to press Brazil high up the pitch, not allowing them to build from the back. Every time Alisson received the ball, 3 Argentine players would converge on whoever he passed to. But Tite had prepared for this. Brazil's midfielders were constantly moving, creating passing triangles that helped them escape the pressure. In the 28th minute, Argentina nearly scored from a set-piece. Messi's free kick from 25 yards out was perfectly placed, curling around the wall and heading for the top corner. Alisson's fingertip save was magnificent, tipping the ball onto the crossbar. As the goalkeeper distributed the ball quickly, Neymar was already sprinting forward, sensing an opportunity. The counter-attack developed at lightning speed. Alisson's throw found Casemiro, who immediately looked up and spotted the space behind. Argentina's advanced midfield. This was Brazil at their most dangerous, quick, decisive and deadly on the transition. Ney! Fred's pass found him in space, 40 yards from goal with Argentina caught off balance. This was the moment every Brazilian fan had dreamed of. Neymar in space, with only defenders between him and glory. But instead of taking on 3 defenders himself, he spotted Gabriel Jesus making an overlapping run on the right. The pass was perfect, splitting 2 defenders and finding Jesus in stride. The Manchester City forward's shot was powerful and low, forcing Emiliano Martinez into a sprawling save. The rebound fell to Lucas Paquetá, but his effort was blocked by a desperate, sliding tackle from Otamendi. "Porra," Neymar cursed, but he was already moving again, staying positive. In previous tournaments, a sequence like that would have led to him trying increasingly desperate solo efforts. Tonight felt different. On the sidelines, both coaches were animated. Tite was pleased with the quick transition, but frustrated that the finish hadn't been clinical enough. Scaloni was shouting at his defenders, pointing out where they had been caught out of position. The technical areas had become mini command centers, with assistant coaches constantly relaying messages to players. The first half continued with end-to-end action. Argentina had their moments. A Lautaro Martinez shot that Alisson saved low to his left. A scramble in the Brazilian penalty area that somehow didn't result in a goal. But Brazil were matching them blow for blow, and crucially, they looked like a team. Every player was working for each other, with Neymar as the conductor rather than the soloist. The physicality of the match was increasing with each passing minute. Tackles were flying in from both sides, and the referee was starting to lose control. When Otamendi caught Neymar with a late challenge just outside the penalty area, the Brazilian bench erupted in protest. But Neymar quickly got to his feet, diffusing the tension with a pat on Otamendi's back. Just before halftime, the breakthrough almost came. Neymar collected the ball near the center circle, surrounded by 3 Argentine players. The old Neymar might have tried to dribble through all of them. Instead, he played a simple pass to Casemiro, who immediately found Vinicius Jr. on the wing. The winger's pace took him past 2 defenders, and his cross found Neymar, who had continued his run into the penalty area. The ball sat up perfectly for a volley. Neymar could see Martinez diving across his goal line, could hear 70,000 Brazilians holding their breath. Time seemed to slow as his foot connected with the leather, sending it toward the bottom corner. For a split second it looked perfect, until Martinez's outstretched hand deflected it inches wide of the post. "Que salvada!" the Argentine fans screamed, but Neymar just smiled and gave Martinez a respectful nod. The promise he had made was being kept, even in moments of disappointment. The halftime whistle brought temporary relief. As the teams walked off the pitch, Tite pulled Neymar aside. "That's exactly what I wanted to see from you," the coach said, his voice barely audible over the crowd noise. "You're playing like a captain tonight." In the tunnel, Messi jogged past, and for a moment, their eyes met. There was mutual respect there, 2 superstars who understood the weight of carrying their country's dreams. "Good luck, hermano," Messi said quietly, and Neymar nodded in response. The exchange didn't go unnoticed by the television cameras, and commentators around the world were already calling it a moment that transcended football rivalry. Here were 2 men who had carried the hopes of their nations for over a decade, showing mutual respect in the biggest moment of their careers. The Brazilian locker room was buzzing with energy, despite the scoreless first half. Tite's tactical adjustments were minimal. The team was playing exactly how he wanted them to. "Keep doing what you're doing," he told them. "They're getting tired. Their legs will go in the last 20 minutes. That's when we strike." But Neymar knew it wouldn't be that simple. Argentina had been in too many finals, had experienced too much heartbreak to fold easily. They would throw everything at Brazil in the second half, and someone would need to step up to make the difference. Dr. Rodrigo Lasmar, Brazil's team doctor, was checking on several players who had taken hard knocks. The physical toll of the first 45 minutes was evident. Jerseys were soaked with sweat, despite the evening kickoff, and several players were receiving treatment for minor cuts and bruises. As they prepared to return to the pitch, Neymar closed his eyes briefly and whispered another prayer. "Help me keep my promise, Deus. Help me be what this team needs." The second half was about to begin, and with it, the most important 45 minutes of Neymar's international career. The battle was just getting started, and everything he had promised, to God, to his country, to himself, hung in the balance. Outside, 70,000 voices were calling for a hero. Tonight, Neymar was determined to answer that call, not as an individual seeking glory, but as a leader carrying his nation's dreams toward victory. The war was far from over. The moment of truth. The second half erupted into chaos from the first whistle. Argentina emerged from the tunnel like a team possessed, their yellow and blue stripes cutting through the Brazilian night with renewed urgency. Scaloni had clearly delivered a masterclass at halftime. His players were pressing higher, moving the ball faster, and most dangerously, they were hunting in packs. Messi collected the ball in his own half and began one of those runs that had tormented defenders for 15 years. Past Fred, around Casemiro, the little magician was weaving through Brazil's midfield like he was playing against schoolchildren. Marquinhos stepped up to challenge, but Messi's touch was perfect, the ball seeming to stick to his left foot as he accelerated into the penalty area. "Cover! Cover!" Neymar screamed from the halfway line, but he was too far away to help. This was the nightmare scenario. Messi one-on-one with Alisson, 70,000 Brazilians holding their breath, and the weight of history balanced on a knife's edge. The shot was low and hard, aimed for the bottom left corner. Alisson threw himself across the goal, his fingertips just grazing the ball enough to send it crashing against the post. The rebound fell perfectly for Lautaro Martinez, but somehow, impossibly, the striker blazed his effort over the crossbar from 6 yards out. The Argentine bench collapsed in disbelief. Scaloni put his hands to his head, unable to comprehend how his team hadn't taken the lead. In the stands, Argentine fans were already celebrating before watching the ball sail into the crowd behind the goal. "Graças a Deus," Neymar whispered, under his breath as he jogged back for the goal kick. But he knew they couldn't rely on luck forever. Argentina were playing like a team with nothing to lose, and those were always the most dangerous opponents. The game's tempo increased dramatically. Every tackle was a battle, every pass a statement of intent. In the 58th minute, Di Maria's pace down the right wing caused chaos in Brazil's defence. His cross found De Paul unmarked at the edge of the penalty area, but the midfielder's shot was deflected wide by a crucial intervention from Danilo. Tite was pacing the technical area like a caged animal, constantly shouting instructions that were barely audible over the crowd noise. His assistant coaches were frantically taking notes, preparing potential substitutions that could change the game's complexion. Then, in the 64th minute, everything changed. Brazil won a corner kick after Vinicius Jr.'s shot was deflected behind by Montiel. As Neymar jogged toward the corner flag, he felt that familiar tingle of anticipation. Throughout his career, set pieces had been moments of magic, opportunities to create something from nothing. But tonight was different. Instead of looking for the spectacular, Neymar was thinking tactically. He'd noticed throughout the first half that Argentina's zonal marking left small gaps at the near post, especially when Messi dropped back to help defend. "Marquinhos," he called out, making eye contact with his Paris Saint-Germain teammate. "Near post, same as training." The centre-back nodded, understanding immediately. They'd practiced this routine hundreds of times, a short corner to create a better angle, then a driven cross aimed at the near post where Marquinhos could attack, the ball with his full height advantage. Neymar's first touch was perfect, controlling the ball and immediately cutting back to create space. Molina rushed out to close him down, but the Brazilian was too quick, his left foot sending a precise cross toward the near post. Marquinhos rose above Otamendi, his powerful header directed downward toward the goal line. Emiliano Martinez reacted brilliantly, diving to his left and getting a strong hand to the ball. But the power of the header was too much. The ball squirmed from his grasp, bouncing once before crossing the line by mere inches. For a split second, the stadium fell silent. Then, like a dam bursting, 70,000 Brazilian voices exploded in unison. "Goal! Goal!" Neymar's celebration was different this time. No theatrical backflips, no elaborate dances. He ran straight to Marquinhos, embracing his teammate before the rest of the team piled on top of them. This was about the collective, about the promise he'd made in the locker room. On the sidelines, Tite pumped his fists skyward, his usual calm demeanor completely abandoned. The Brazilian bench erupted, with substitutes and staff members hugging each other in pure joy. In the stands, grown men were crying, and the famous Brazilian rhythm section was thundering out samba beats that seemed to shake the entire stadium. But Argentina weren't finished. Not even close. Scaloni immediately made 2 substitutions, bringing on Angel Correa and Joaquin Correa for De Paul and Paredes. The message was clear: attack at all costs. With 20 minutes remaining, Argentina had nothing to lose and everything to gain. The tactical shift was immediate and dangerous. Argentina abandoned their structured approach and began throwing players forward in waves. Messi dropped even deeper, becoming a quarterback launching long balls toward the Brazilian penalty area. Every Argentina attack felt like a potential equalizer. In the 73rd minute, disaster almost struck. A long ball from Messi found Di Maria in space down the right wing. The veteran winger, playing what could be his last major tournament, turned back the clock with a burst of pace that left Renan Lodi trailing in his wake. His cross was perfect, finding Lautaro Martinez at the back post with only Alisson to beat. The header seemed destined for the net, but somehow Alisson contorted his body to make an impossible save, clawing the ball away from the top corner. The Brazilian goalkeeper's celebration was as passionate as any goal-scorer's. He knew he'd just saved his country's Copa America dreams. Ali! 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 The Brazilian fans chanted, recognizing a moment of pure brilliance when they saw it. But the pressure was relentless. Argentina kept coming, wave after wave of attacks that tested every aspect of Brazil's defensive resolve. Casemiro was covering every blade of grass in midfield, making tackle after tackle, his jersey soaked with sweat and determination. With 15 minutes remaining, Tite made a crucial decision. He brought off Gabriel Jesus, who had worked tirelessly, but was clearly exhausted, and introduced Everton Ribeiro, a player known for his work rate and ability to keep possession under pressure. 20 minutes, Ney, Casemiro shouted during a brief stoppage. 20 minutes and we're champions. But Neymar knew those would be the longest 20 minutes of their lives. Argentina were throwing everything forward now, their desperation palpable. Messi was everywhere, dropping deep to collect the ball, drifting wide to create overloads, constantly probing for the weakness that would unlock Brazil's defense. The clock seemed to move in slow motion. Every Argentina corner kick felt like a potential disaster. Every Brazilian clearance was met with renewed pressure. The crowd had gone beyond noise. They were creating a wall of sound that seemed to physically push the players around the pitch. In the 85th minute, Messi produced a moment of pure magic that reminded everyone why he was considered one of the greatest players in history. Collecting the ball 30 yards from goal, he beat Fred with a simple body feint, then nutmegged Casemiro before unleashing a curling shot that seemed destined for the top corner. Alisson's save was reflexive, instinctive, the kind of reaction that separates great goalkeepers from good ones. The ball tipped over the crossbar, but the message was clear. Argentina weren't going quietly into the night. As the corner kick was cleared, Neymar found himself in possession near the halfway line. With space ahead of him, the old Neymar might have tried to run down the clock with elaborate tricks and skills. Tonight he kept it simple, playing the ball to Everton Ribeiro and making a supporting run. The move broke down, but the intent was clear. This was a team, playing for each other, a leader fulfilling his promise to be something greater than individual glory. 5 minutes of added time were announced, and the stadium reached fever pitch. Every touch was cheered or jeered, depending on which shirt the player wore. Every tackle was a battle for continental supremacy. Argentina's final chance came in the 93rd minute. A long throw from Montiel caused chaos in the Brazilian penalty area. The ball bounced off Marquinhos off Otamendi and seemed to hang in the air forever before falling to Messi just 8 yards from goal. This was it. The moment that would define careers, tournaments, legacies. Messi, the little genius who had carried Argentina's dreams for so long, with one final chance to force extra time. His shot was powerful and well-placed, but Alisson was equal to it, diving low to his right and gathering the ball securely. As he held onto the ball, the referee's whistle pierced through the noise. Brazil had won the Copa America. Neymar collapsed to his knees at the center circle, overwhelmed by emotion. The promise had been kept. The burden had been lifted. For the first time in his international career, he was a champion. As his teammates rushed to embrace him, Neymar looked up at the night sky and whispered one word: Obrigado. Thank you. The promise fulfilled. The final whistle echoed across the Estadio Nacional like a thunderclap, releasing emotions that had been building for months, years, even decades. Neymar remained on his knees at the center circle for what felt like an eternity, his hands covering his face as tears streamed between his fingers. The weight of a nation's expectations, carried for so long on his shoulders, had finally been transformed into pure, unbridled joy. Around him, chaos erupted in the most beautiful way. Casemiro was the first to reach him, pulling his long-time teammate into a bear hug that lifted Neymar off the ground. "We did it, brother! We fucking did it!" the midfielder screamed, his voice barely audible over the roar of 70,000 Brazilian fans who had witnessed their team end a 12-year trophy drought. The celebration was different this time. There was no individual showboating, no camera-seeking. Theatrics. This was raw, authentic emotion from a group of players who had genuinely fought for each other. Alisson sprinted the length of the field to join the group hug, his gloves still muddy from the crucial saves that had preserved Brazil's victory. Marquinhos, the goal-scorer, was being mobbed by teammates who recognized that his header had been the culmination of collective effort, not individual brilliance. "Nay, look!" Vinicius Jr. was pointing toward the stands, where a massive banner had been unfurled. It read simply, "Obrigado, Capitão." "Thank you, Captain." But it wasn't just one banner. Throughout the stadium, Brazilian fans were holding up signs, scarves, and flags, expressing their gratitude to a player who had finally delivered when it mattered most. The emotions overwhelmed Neymar again. This was what he had prayed for in the locker room. Not just victory, but the chance to unite his country in celebration rather than divide it in recrimination. For too long, his relationship with Brazilian fans had been complicated, marked by criticism and controversy. Tonight, all of that melted away in the pure joy of achievement. Tite appeared beside him, the usually composed coach now openly weeping. "You kept your promise," he said, though Neymar wasn't sure if the coach was referring to tactical promises or something deeper. "You played for the team, for the country. This is what leadership looks like." The medal ceremony was a blur of golden confetti and Portuguese chants. When FIFA officials placed the Copa América trophy in Neymar's hands, he immediately lifted it toward the section of the stadium where he could see Brazilian flags waving most frantically. The gesture was symbolic. This trophy belonged to all of them, not just to him. His family had somehow made it onto the pitch. His mother Nadine was sobbing uncontrollably, her hands shaking as she touched the gold medal hanging around her. "Son's neck. Meu filho, meu campeão," she whispered through her tears. "My son, my champion." His father was more composed but no less emotional. "You remember what your grandfather used to say?" he asked, pulling Neymar aside for a private moment amid the chaos. "Talent is God's gift to you. What you do with it is your gift back to God." "I remember, Pai," Neymar replied, his voice thick with emotion. I think I finally understand what he meant. His sister Rafaela was there too, along with his son Davi, who was too young to fully comprehend the magnitude of the moment, but was giggling with delight at all the confetti and celebration around him. As Neymar picked up his son, placing the gold medal around the little boy's neck, photographers captured an image that would become iconic. 3 generations of the Santos family celebrating Brazil's return to continental glory. The post-match interviews were unlike any Neymar had given before. Usually guarded and sometimes defensive when speaking to the media, tonight he was open, vulnerable, and deeply reflective. "This victory is not about me," he told the assembled journalists, his voice still hoarse from shouting encouragement to teammates during those tense final minutes. "It's about this group, this generation of players who refuse to give up on each other. We've been criticized, and sometimes rightfully so, but tonight we showed that we can rise above individual egos for something greater." A Brazilian journalist asked him about the transformation they had witnessed in his play, the more team-oriented approach that had characterized his performance in the final. Neymar paused for a long moment, considering his words carefully. "Sometimes you have to lose yourself to find yourself," he said finally. "I spent too many years trying to prove I was good enough on my own. Tonight, I learned that greatness comes from making your teammates better, not from showing how much better you are than them." The question about his emotional reaction to the final whistle brought an even longer pause, How could he explain the promise he had made in the locker room without sounding overly dramatic or religious? How could he describe the weight that had been lifted without diminishing the achievement itself? "I made a promise before this game," he said slowly, choosing his words with unusual care. "Not to the media, not to the fans, but to myself and to something bigger than football. I promised that if we won tonight, I would use this platform differently. I would remember that wearing this jersey is not about personal glory. It's about representing the dreams of 200 million Brazilians." The interviewer pressed him on what that promise meant in practical terms. Neymar smiled, the first genuine, unguarded smile he had shown in a press conference in years. "It means no more controversies for the sake of attention. It means thinking about the team before thinking about individual statistics. It means being a leader that young Brazilian players can look up to, not just for skills but for character." He paused again. "And it means never forgetting this feeling, this responsibility that comes with success." Back in the locker room, the celebration continued, but with a different energy. There was dancing and singing, but there was also a sense of mission accomplished, of promises kept. The players were already talking about the World Cup in Qatar just over a year away. "This is just the beginning," Casemiro declared, raising a bottle of champagne toward the ceiling. "We've shown we can win together. Now we take this spirit to Qatar and bring home the big one." Neymar nodded, but his thoughts were already beyond football trophies. The promise he had made was about more than winning games. It was about using his influence responsibly, about being worthy of the platform that football had given him. Later that night, alone in his hotel room with the Copa América medal, sitting on the nightstand, Neymar called his grandfather's brother, the only family member who truly remembered the old man's wisdom about talent and responsibility. "Tio," he said when the elderly voice answered, "I think Vovo would be proud tonight." "He already is, meu filho," came the reply. "He's been watching and he knows you finally understand." As dawn broke over Brasilia, Neymar stood on his hotel balcony, looking out over the city where his promise had been fulfilled. The streets below were still filled with celebrating fans, their chants echoing off the buildings in a symphony of joy that showed no signs of stopping. He thought about the journey that had brought him to this moment, the boy from Mogi das Cruzes who had dreamed of glory, the teenager who had carried expectations too heavy for his young shoulders, the man who had learned that true greatness meant lifting others rather than standing above them. The Copa América trophy sat behind him, gleaming in the morning light. But more important than any trophy was the promise he had kept, to his country, to his teammates, and most importantly, to himself. For the first time in years, Neymar Jr. felt truly at peace with who he was and what he represented. The promise had been made, tested, and fulfilled. Now came the even greater challenge, keeping it for the rest of his career. But as he watched the sun rise over Brazil, Neymar was confident that the hardest part was over. He had found his way, back to what mattered most, and he would never lose sight of it again. The promise was not just fulfilled, it was just beginning. What did you think of this story? Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next ones. Let me know in the comments, what Neymar story would you like to see here? Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.